Powerful
Well,
too.
well, Robert Earl Dean, man, do I got an interview with you today. I'm trying to tell you, I'm so excited. I can't even sleep. Didn't get a good night's sleep last night because my mentor, the woman that put some wind beneath my wings, is on here this morning. I almost want to say, get deep with you, Dr. Evangelist Waymaker Weber, Assemblywoman Weber, who is doing so much for our community, is on with us today. Dr. Weber, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. How are you?
We are blessed and highly favored. No, I just want to first start off by saying I actually want to go back to school, but I only want to go back to school if the building is named after you that I'm getting ready to do my schooling in.
Yeah, my students are working hard to try to make that happen. I'm honored that they think that much of me.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I'm one of them, and I want to get right on that bandwagon with them. Anything that we can do to help them to have the presence of one of the. I think you could literally, you know how they say, if you plant your seeds, that there will always be a harvest. And you have planted so many seeds and so many young people in the community that we are now starting to see the harvest all over, from politics to doctors, lawyers to community activists. And so I first want to just honor you first by saying thank you for all that you have done, not only for our city, but for the world.
Well, I'm honored that my students have done so well. Everywhere I go, I run into them. There are lots of them, even in Sacramento, that I didn't know about, that were serving in various capacities as clerks and on the Senate floor and assembly. And I was just amazed to see how many are lobbyists in Sacramento working for agencies. And it's always funny because, everybody in Sacramento says, everybody must have been your student. I said, well, if they weren't, they knew one of my students. But I'm just proud of my students all over the world. I'm amazed. I was in Egypt and somebody hollered, Dr. Weber. And my son said, can we go anywhere without folks calling your name? I said, I don't know. But I'm proud of the fact that after 40 years, my students kind of heard the message and have taken it and are trying to make the world better where they are. And I'm really proud of the work that they've done. It's been amazing. This is Black, white students, Latino students, Ricardo Lara, who's now the insurance commissioner, was a former student of mine, and so they're just everywhere, and that's a good thing. That says that even while you're working in the vineyard, you're not paying a whole lot of attention, you're just doing the work you got to do, but all around you things are growing up. And I remember I wrote an article for one of the religious papers in Oceanside after Obama won Iowa, and I said to them, I said, it was called planting seeds without seeing. Planting trees without seeing the forest. That you just keep working ahead of yourself, planting stuff, and you look up one day and you look behind you, and there's a whole forest of trees behind you, and you just keep working. So I encourage those who spend their time encouraging young people to be the best they can be, that there is a harvest. There is some good that everybody experiences, and I'm just proud to be a part of some of that legacy of those who helped me as I was coming along. I'm very proud of that. Yes.
Yes. Well, you are shaking it up in Sacramento. You dropping bill after bill. I mean, there's so much going on in Sacramento that we actually have to have a reporter follow you around because we don't know what's coming next. So let's talk about your latest push and effort that we want to get everybody involved in.
Yes, that's Proposition 16. Some of you may remember, if you're old enough, if you're older than, say, at least 40, you remember 24 years ago, we had affirmative action where we could go out and recruit, and young people go out and recruit people for jobs and opportunities. And you remember, Leonard, because you were part of one of those programs,
yes,
the African American Male Project, that we were able to implement as a result of looking at some challenges faced by young Black men in San Diego City schools. And we hired you and 3 other amazing brothers who developed the program, and as a result saw some amazing results. Mm-hmm. So we had the ability to try to mitigate the impact of racism, to try to level the playing field, not to give anything to people that they didn't deserve or give things away that folks weren't qualified, but to go in and make sure that racism and sexism was not barriers to people being successful, and to remove those barriers and then allow people to grow. And so 24 years ago, Proposition 209 was placed on the ballot. And I was at the school board at the time, and I fought very hard against the initiative because I knew it would have some devastating effects on our ability to do business, to basically diversify our schools, and to do the things we knew were really important. And so, unfortunately, it passed by 53% or 54% of the vote. And people didn't realize what they were voting for because it was masqueraded as the California Civil Rights Initiative. And they quoted Dr. King and they quoted his wife. And I remember she came on and said, listen, do not quote my husband because this would not have been what he wanted. This was not it. And they used the typical phrase, you know, don't judge me by the color of my skin, but the content of my character. And they still use that phrase. And I tell people all the time that was Dr. King's dream. It was not his reality. And he knew he had to wake up to make that a reality. And so we're still faced with that today. So they were able to pass it. And as a result, it blocked all efforts. It banned any effort to try to level the playing field is what it was. They claimed they were blocking discrimination. But what they were blocking were the efforts to eliminate discrimination. And so we had lots of things that happened. I had persons who had passed away, the Kimbroughs and Danny Scarborough and others who established scholarships that I could no longer give the first generation African American students because that was, quote, race and gender based. And so we lost our Black Male Project that had made wonderful strides in making hundreds of young males across the county with a Be a Better grade point average. We could no longer focus on Black men. Wow. We had to basically focus on everyone, which means the issues that they faced in terms of self-esteem that might have been driven by race or gender could no longer be we could no longer target those young men. And the same with true Latinas. And we saw what was happening in business. Businesses plummeted from 30 and 40% that were minority women, and minority and women businesses in San Diego went down to 1.5%. Wow. And it still is at 1.5%. LA saw the same thing, and San Francisco saw the same thing. So we discovered that Black and brown businesses are losing $1.1 billion a year in California because they could not compete with the traditional white males who continue to hire each other, basically continue to support each other's businesses and develop standards that really alienate everybody else from participating. So this is for 24 years, this has had a devastating effect on California. And it's one of only 9 states that actually eliminate affirmative action. All the other states, Texas, Illinois, all the other states have affirmative action, have programs to try to level the playing field and see better results in terms of the programs of business efforts, university admissions, those kinds of things that we don't have here in California. So we're trying to turn that around. It'll be on the ballot on Tuesday. We are working like crazy to make sure that everybody knows it and that they vote yes on Prop 16. Yes on 16, because that will restore affirmative action back to California.
Now, one of the things about affirmative action, a lot of times people try to give a negative connotation to affirmative action. But can you give the positive of affirmative action? You've been sharing a lot, but a lot of folks say, well, you only got here because of affirmative action. And my response has always been, you all blocked the door and affirmative action just unlocked it, and then we went through.
Exactly. Well, you know what happened with our Black Male Project. Yeah. We discovered that because of issues of economics and various other conditions in communities, that our young men were not doing well. They didn't have the positive role models. They didn't have the focus in terms of the teachers and the curriculums, and there was a lot of negative information about people being afraid of Black men. And so we then implemented this program with you and 3 other brothers. And as a result, we saw that this number of 32 Black men with a Be a Better average went from 32 to 500 and 600 young Black men who were actually doing well in school. And so we then opened that opportunity because no one had actually addressed them about issues of excellence and academics and going to college and seeing role models. And these young men, many of them now, I run across them now who are getting their doctorates, who are counselors and psychologists and businessmen. These young men now were the doors of going to academic in terms of university for those 5 or 6 years that this program existed in its original form, began to improve the performance of these young men because we improved their self-esteem. We gave them mentors. We gave them what other folks had in their society and in their communities that encouraged them to do well. So we have excellent records of that. That happened. I was a student at UCLA, and it was a struggle because I got in before affirmative action. And after I got in, then there were a number of programs that eventually got developed for affirmative action. But I know that I would not have probably gone on to graduate school had it not been for the fact that UCLA made an effort to hire African-American faculty. I had one African-American professor, Dr. Asante, who to this day is still my mentor, who basically focused on me and began to recruit other African-American students into the communications program. There were almost none in the program. And while he was there, he went out and he met with students. He encouraged Black students to become a part of the program. And there was about 5 or 6 of us who did. But in addition to that, he, as an undergraduate, he recommended me for a Woodrow Wilson Fellow. And I went to the meeting at Woodrow Wilson Fellow. And fortunately for me, they did not just say, let me see your grade point average and those kinds of things. They did what they call a holistic assessment to see, is this person going to become a university professor? Because Woodrow Wilson scholars become university professors. That's the goal. And I had never thought about becoming a university professor ever. I thought I'd just go teach kindergarten and move on. And these folks actually evaluated and assessed me, taking into consideration not just my grade point average, which was okay, but the fact that I came in struggling at the university without role models, without images of what I needed to be. But by the time I met Asante, and as a junior, I guess a sophomore, I had begun to improve, and he began to encourage me and show me things that the white faculty had no interest in showing. And so I then became, an excellent student, dean's list and so forth and so on. And so what they did was they assessed my total career, said, you came in out of the inner city and you did okay. You didn't flunk out. But look what you did once you really got a handle on what the university was about. And as a result, I became a Woodrow Wilson Fellow, and one of 17 at UCLA out of a class of 7,000. And what happened after that was there was a GAP program, a graduate advancement program. And it was specifically designed for graduate students of color because UCLA had very few graduate students. And so they developed this GAP program that was kind of like an EOP program. And so this graduate advancement program gave us mentors, helped us to understand the university, hooked us up together as a team so we could basically meet other graduate students, because you're on a campus of 30,000, you don't see other Black graduate students. And they became a support system for us. Financial aid, work study, gave us mentors, jobs, those kinds of things. And that they could not take the test for me. They could not write my paper for me. They could not defend my dissertation for me. But they could provide me with the kind of support with others who had been that road before, who could talk to us about what it was like, who gave us some hints and some tips on how to deal with the institution, because none of us, I myself included, had any relatives that had a PhD. And in fact, when I told my father I was going to get a PhD, that they wanted me to get one, he said, what is that? And I had to explain to him, I said, well, Daddy, that's the highest degree you can get in an academic institution. And he said, let's go get it. That was my daddy. He said, let us go get it. And so he could, the most he could do would be to encourage me, those kinds of things. But he had no idea of the road that I would walk. Asante had been there, so he knew, and a few others had. And so the GAP program gave me a support system. That's all it did. It did not take my test for me. It did not make it easy. And those of us who had gone through these programs did well. So affirmative action says, we know there is some systemic racism and there's some systemic gender bias. Mostly all faculty are male. At that time, were all male. They had little tolerance for women and surely no tolerance for people of color. And as a result of that, there was no one to harness their interest and no one to recognize that they were struggling. Well, the affirmative action programs did that. And as a result, students did well. And so when I look at the legislature and I see the number of African Americans and Latinos and API and all those folks that are in the legislature now, they all talk about their experience with affirmative action, that they had organizations and support systems, and they didn't feel so alone at the university, that someone really knew they had great potential. and accented that potential and helped them. And so that's what affirmative action does. It's not going to give away anything. When I was on the school board, we did the same thing with businesses, and San Diego did very little business with people of color and with women. Mm-hmm. And when I was on the school board, I said, hey, let's give everybody a try. Let's go recruit in some of these other areas. And while we were doing our proposition to build schools, was the first time we actually had an African American selling some of the bonds. 25% of our bonds were sold by private clearing accounts. And we'd never done that before. And what happened was we kept going to the same source, Bank of America. Mm-hmm. And we finally cut out a piece of that for women or minorities or others to compete. We discovered that they could compete as well, if not better, than Bank of America. And from that point on, Bank of America was saying, well, do you have some more folks like this we can use? Can we, are they still prepared to sell more bonds and those kinds of things? And so, it's really opening people's eyes to see that there is some diversity. And when you ask them to do that, and when you make it a part of your culture, that you're going to diversify what you're doing, those who are working for you then begin to realize, like Bank of America, yeah, we can do this. Why not? Let's give 25% of this business to minority and women. 75% is still going to white males. Okay. But at the same time, we're opening up this opportunity that we have not had before. And we're basically helping those who are doing business to do well and enhancing those communities that are struggling. So it talks about a support system. It talks about leveling the playing field. That we recognize that this is an unequal world. And as a result of it being unequal, we have to somehow level the field so that those who run can basically have an opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, and one of the things that I always want to applaud you on is that even though you are a professor or a mentor and our leader, you always opened your house up to so many of us to sow into it. I always tell people, if you have never had Dr. Weber's greens, you ain't had greens yet. But it was that time that you would just sow into us, and I see so many young people. I'm excited to see the two beautiful children that you have and what they're now doing in the political arena. When Mr. Weber came up to me, because he 6'8" or 6'6"?
It's up 6'6".
Yeah, when he came up to me and I said, I remember you when I was looking down at you. Now I'm looking up at you. But he just was so prepared, so structured, just showing strong leadership. And then you already know my heart is already doing amazingly over leading in her field. How does it feel that you've sold into so many young people, but you're now also receiving those residuals of seeds in your own children?
Well, I'm very grateful for that. My kids paid attention to some of the stuff I did, not all of it, but they paid attention. And it's interesting that I tell people all the time that what you put into your kids may not look like they're paying attention, but they really are. And my kids went to an awful lot of meetings, so they know how to go to meetings, and they know how to run meetings, and they've stood by and watched their mom speak to small groups and large groups, and so they have a sense. Kids pick up what you do. And so I never had the luxury, quote unquote, of leaving them at home. My relatives are all in LA. And so I took them everywhere from the time they were little bitty kids. I have pictures of them sitting at banquets, bored as can be, but they went everywhere. And I was very grateful too that my students, that if they came to the university, I'd look up and, because I had to teach a class or somebody wasn't feeling well that day or whatever. And I'd go to class and come back and they'd be gone. And I said, what happened? They said, oh, so-and-so picked them up. One of my students had picked them up and taken them to lunch. And so they learned the university. They learned how to walk the campuses. They learned how to interact with the professionals. They learned how to deal with all of the Stokely Carmichaels and the Maulana Karangas and Jim Turners, because these were folks who were my colleagues and basically knew my kids. And so they learned how to walk this world and how to listen to the issues and how to fight for it. And I continue to be amazed as they grow and decide to participate in the politics that I'm involved in, and they really begin to see what I've been fighting for all of these years. They've grown a sense of respect to understand just how difficult the task is, how hard it is. And my prayer is that when I leave this earth and stop fighting, that they will still be here fighting. that they will still be raising the issues. And so I've been very proud of what they've done. My son is very involved in Prop 16. He's in charge of the San Diego effort here. He helped his sister also get elected to the city council in La Mesa. And people are, and as my daughter is, on the city council in La Mesa, immediately, the issues broke out last year, and folks were amazed. I got all kinds of messages sent to me. Oh my God, Akila's there fighting for La Mesa and is making sure that everybody's safe and this and that and raising the right issues and going in and taking on issues like smoking in restaurants and things like that, because she's a physician and she's bringing in the information to show a high number of people in La Mesa who have lung cancer and this and that. And so she's done an amazing job. And I was out at one of the casinos doing an advertisement for them for their 37th anniversary. And the guy was saying, we're watching your daughter. We're so glad that she represents us and represents us well, because he lives in La Mesa. And so, she's done a good job. She has really raised the issues, and she's smart. She's concerned. She cares. She's a mom, wife. Those kinds of things all factor into how people do their politics. And so my kids have done well. I'm proud of them when they stand up and discuss the issues that they sound like their mother. And so I'm pleased by that. The fact that I know they're going to do a good job in raising these issues that are so very, very important. And they understand now. I mean, I think at first they were like, why do you always have to go, Mom? Why you always have to be there? Why you? And now they kind of understand. And they too have access to my students that babysat them. Mm-hmm. Every now and then I'll run across somebody, we'll get to talking, and I'll say, Gil, this was your babysitter. And they go, what? And then the students will look up and he'll look down and he says, I don't remember. I said, no, you only 2 or 3 years old. You don't remember. Yeah. Awesome. But they were in good hands by the students who I cared for, and they cared for him. And that's why I say, you can't lose when you give. You can't lose. You can give all you got. You still got more to give, and you can't lose because somehow or another, as you're giving, someone is giving back to you. And I remember when my husband was very ill and at the point of death, I had so many students and so many people on my staff who I don't know how I got through it all, but they carried me. You know how it is. They say you walking with God at one point, and then before you looked at the footsteps, there's only one set of footsteps. Yes. Because you're being carried. Mm-hmm. I got through that semester, got through all the programs and the baccalaureate and everything else, and I vaguely remember, what took place. But Chrysonia was doing things, and others on the staff were doing things, and the programs just flowed. And I they tell me where to stand, and I would stand. And they really carried me, and in so many ways, through his illness and his death. No. And so you can't beat God given. You just cannot beat him giving. And I feel the same way in the legislature. God has blessed me to be able to stand in some places that my parents only dreamed about, that many of you in this community have actually only thought about, to be able to stand on what they call the green carpet and to argue on our behalf, to be able to fight the issues of police brutality and use of lethal force and those kinds of bills and win, to be able to deal with reparations that's coming up. We passed the reparations bill signed by the governor. California will be the first state to actually do reparations. And then on top of that, to make sure that ethnic studies, the study of people of color in the state of California, is required of every student who graduates from the Cal State University, which is the largest educational system in the world, state system. Wow. And it has over 500,000 students at the Cal State University. And every student who graduates from that system is going to have to study African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, and API, Asian Pacific Islanders, to basically give California students an understanding of the people who live here, and to basically have that as a requirement. I mean, a requirement is amazing. It will increase not only the knowledge of our students, it increase the number of faculty of color on our campuses, so that our students will see that as the norm rather than something that's unusual, and they better equip those who educate our students, because most of our teachers come out of the Cal State University system. And so we're excited about that. That's across the nation. All of my colleagues in ethnic studies are in awe of the fact that California has this mandated requirement. It is not an option. It is not one of the many choices you can make. you must take an ethnic studies class in order to get your degree, your bachelor's degree from the California State University system. And so we've been blessed. God has been good. He has blessed me with some amazing pieces of legislation that have done some great things in terms of trying to change the dynamics and the conversation in California, but as well as the things that we've done in our school system to try to lift the lower performing students. The $300 million we got a couple of years ago, and we're going to continue to work on that. The accountability that people have to tell us what they're doing with their money, because many parents are frustrated with we're giving them more and more money to our schools, and we still don't see the results that we want. And so I've been pushing the accountability piece. That's been very, very important in the state of California. So we are, God has blessed me, and with not only the knowledge, but I hope and pray the courage to always stand for what is right and what is just. And so this is we're seeing the harvest of all the love and the support that people in this community have given me. That gives me the courage to stand, because I know they know what I'm standing for, and they'll stand there with me.
So my last question is this. When you were on the school board, they said that you just dropped the mic because every time you spoke, everybody was on pins and needles because they knew it was going to be straight and it was going to be factual. Now I'm seeing the same thing in the legislative body in which you're doing, and with the Black Caucus and everything. My question is, are we going to go to D.C.? Are we going to go to D.C.? You know what? I don't really have that desire to go to D.C. People ask that question regularly, and I had the choice to run for the congressional seat this time. And I chose to stay in the Assembly because D.C. is wonderful, and it does a lot of good things. But it also, as you can probably imagine, you don't know what comes out of D.C. You sit here every day, and you can't name one bill that has come out of D.C. because of the complication and the politics and the fighting. But you can name what comes out of the State House as a result of the work that I do. And so someone asked me, I was on a Zoom call with Florida because they were amazed at the bills I was doing. And so I was on a Zoom call with one of the leadership groups, about 100 people, 100 Black folks in Sarasota, Florida. And they said, when you finish your term, you have 4 more years, Dr. Webb. When you finish, will you come to D.C.? And I laughed. I said, maybe not, but I said maybe, but probably not. I said, I don't mind working with DC folks. I said, but it can be very frustrating when you're putting in a lot of energy. And I see this every day with my colleagues, whether it's Karen Bass or the other sisters that are there and the brothers that are in DC. I see it every day, and they're struggling hard to make a difference. I understand that, and there's no criticism on my part. But I have enjoyed what I've been doing. And like I said, I had no intentions of ever going to Sacramento. But I was encouraged by Tony Atkins, and I couldn't figure out why God wanted me to go there. Mm-hmm. So I went, and because it was clearly something that kept eating at my heart. I don't have the same eating at my heart right now. Who knows? I might eventually. But I know that I was supposed to come to the Assembly to do the work. And it was interesting because I couldn't figure out until we passed one of the major bill, which was the use of lethal force. Mm-hmm. And Tony Atkins, as I was hugging her and I was leaving the Senate, because we passed it with 75% of the vote, she leaned over to me and said, "This is why you are here. Mm-hmm. You are the only one. Wow. This is why you are here." Wow. And I know that I've gotten dubbed as my colleagues call me, the conscience of the legislature, mm-hmm. because I raise the issues that need to be raised, and I prick the consciences that need to be pricked periodically to help us realize why we're there. Yes. And so I've been blessed with that. I work well with my DC colleagues, and we'll continue to do that. So, I never say, well, I'm not going, because I believe that God has blessed me and I have a responsibility to go. I think that my communities have always embraced me and have invested a lot in this little girl from the projects, that whether it's my church or my relatives. And so I have a responsibility to serve. Mm-hmm. So we'll see where service takes me in 4 years or in a few years. We'll see. But I never had this plan that everybody else has, that is going to take you there. I just figure if you work hard and you serve, that God will figure out where your service is needed. And that's what I want to do. So I appreciate that. And I've been blessed. I've been truly blessed by all of you. Well, there you have it. This is Assemblywoman Miss Dr. Shirley Weber, our shero, the one that is our voice, not only in the State Department, but we say worldwide, because when she speaks, hush, everybody listens.
Yes.
And so she wants to encourage everybody to get out and vote, vote, vote. Prop 16, yes on 16, yes on 16. Let's go ahead and get this back. Let's get this action that's affirmative right now, right here in California, and get back on track to help our
45
kids.
out. Yes. Hallelujah.
Any final words, Dr. Webb, before we sign off?
Take care and have a good day. Thank you very much. I appreciate all your love and all your support. Thank you.
All right, y'all.
That's wonderful.
Was it. That is it for us today. We heard from our leader right here on GOD Radio 1.
.com.